Hey, this is Tony with Salt Strong, and in this video I'm going to share a couple tips to help protect your rods when you're transporting them. Whether you're, riding with them in your boat, in the rod holders, coming back from a trip or going to a spot, or if you're putting them in your truck or in your car, just to help protect your rods. Because the biggest reason why rods break is usually going to be due to, operator error and negligence. Rods are not meant to, be impacted. If things are bumping into them, that can create a small fracture in the rod and that can create a weak point. Also, the guides on a rod are very fragile. They're meant to guide the line. They're not meant to be bumped into or have a lot of pressure on them aside from the rod tip. So a couple things that I want to share to help protect your rod during transport. Now, the first thing is going to be to get yourself a rod sleeve. These things are lifesavers when it comes to protecting your rod. And the biggest reason being because they protect the guides. When you have your line running through the guides and you may have a couple poles, stacked next to each other, or you may walk by your rod and snag your line on your belt or your pliers or something like that, and that can damage your guides if it pulls on it the wrong way or if you actually bump into the guides when you're walking by it or anything like that. So this definitely helps. You can pick these things up on Amazon for really cheap and they just go over the rod like a sock. And what this helps, again, is to keep things from snagging your line on your rod. Also helps a little bit with impact, not a lot, but if you have rods next to each other, it keeps the actual blanks themselves from bumping into each other and things like that. So definitely helps to have yourself a rod sleeve on your rods when traveling with them. Now, one thing you don't want to do is put a rod sleeve on your rod if you're traveling with your rods in the rod holders on the boat, because these things can actually make your rods basically make a sail for your rods. So if the wind catches these things, it will send those rods flying. So if you do put it on your boat or on your rods when they are in the rod holders on your boat, make sure your rods are secured down with a bungee cord or something like that. But if you're traveling with your rods in your vehicle, this can be a great way to keep them from getting tangled up and from bumping into each other. Now, one last tip to help protect your rods, and a lot of people don't really think about this, is when you have a jig head or a weighted hook in the hook keeper on your rod. When that rod is in the rod holder and you're driving your boat, or even if you're in your car and that jig head or that hook is bouncing around and it's impacting the blank, you could create small fractures in the rod where that jig head hits, especially if it's a really heavy jig head or a big jig head. So you want to protect the blank where that hook keeper is. And I'm surprised a lot of companies, rod companies don't do this, is create some sort of protective piece above that hook keeper to protect the rod. Either, foam or even a little bit of, the material the handle's made out of, just put it right above that hook keeper. But something you can do, one of two things. One thing I like to do is, I'll show you this rod here. I have some electrical tape wrapped above the hook keeper. That way when the jig head's on there, it's bumping into the electrical tape and not impacting the rod blank itself. And then another thing you could do, and I'll have to give credit to one of our insider members, Charles LaHaye, he actually mentioned this, is to get yourself some masking tape or painter's tape, and you can actually just tape the jig head to the blank itself. And you definitely want to make sure you're using painter's tape or masking tape. That way it doesn't leave a sticky residue behind or damage your rod. Also, if you do this, don't leave it on there, for a few days. Don't leave it in direct sunlight. Only do this, during transport. Then take it off once you're at your location or you're back to the boat ramp or whatever the case may be. And just to show this really quick, I'll be using some masking tape here, and it makes it nice secure when you do this and you put it around the hook on your rod. So you don't need a lot, just a little piece, and you're just going to take it, put it right over that jig head or hook, and make sure it's nice and tight to the rod, and you're good to go. That jig head is not going to damage the rod, it's not wobbling around, and it's not going to impact the rod at all if you do this. So hopefully these tips can help you out to protect your rods during transport. I know there's a lot of other things that we could be doing to protect our rods, so if you have any additional tips you would like to share, definitely leave them in the comments down below. And if you're new to Salt Strong, just know that we're the best online fishing club in America, especially if you're targeting redfish, sea trout, snook, or flounder. There's nothing else like it because we actually guarantee that you'll start catching more inshore fish while saving time and money. We do this through premium education, our exclusive insider fishing community, and huge discounts on the best tackle for saltwater anglers. To learn more, go to saltstrong.com. Otherwise, we hope to see you again soon.